Hey guys, Andrew here. So today we are making an MCU movie tier list. Now, this is my own personal list, so please don't hold it against me if I put certain movies lower than you would have them, or lower movies on your list that I would put higher. So please don't bash me if you listen to this. This is just my list, my own personal opinion. So let's get started. So we have the tier list here. We're doing S, A, B, C, and D. Now, there's not really an MCU movie that I hate watching. There are some that I just don't watch that often. So that would those sort of movies would probably go in the D tier right here. And now C tier movies, they're a little bit stronger, more watchable films, but those sort of films I would not watch near as often as I do the better ones. And then the B tier would be some pretty good Marvel movies, not necessarily my favorites, but pretty good. And then A tier, that would be almost perfect, in my opinion. These are the movies that are so close to being S tier. But yeah, that's the A tier. And then the S tier are my personal favorite MCU movies. So we're gonna get started. So we'll probably go from the bottom right down here with Spider-Man Far From Home, and then we'll go to Guardians of the Galaxy. And the way I'm going to arrange this tier list, so from right to left, it'll be from the worst to the best. So right to left here, worst to best, right to left here, worst to best. It's going to go all the way up. So the first one that's up here in the S tier, that's going to be my favorite MCU movie. And then the last one will be my least favorite MCU movie, will be in the D tier, which will be the last one in this row. So let's get started. We're going to begin with Spider-Man Far From Home. Okay, where to put this? Not my favorite, but I did enjoy this quite a bit. This one is actually, I had watched all 23 MCU movies in quarantine, so I binge watched all of them, so I had a chance to rank all of them as I was watching them, and this almost made it in my top 10. Like, not even kidding. It was, I mean, it's such a good movie to watch right after Avengers Endgame, because it was just kind of dealing with a little bit with the emotional time with not having Tony Stark in the MCU, but so I'd probably put Spider-Man Far From Home in the B tier. Not exactly one of my personal favorites, so not in the S tier. It's pretty close to A tier, but it's not bad either. There are things I like about it. There are certain plot issues, like I do love Mysterio. I just don't get what his plan is completely, like what he hopes to accomplish. But I do like his powers and abilities, and the illusion scene where he tricks Spider-Man is awesome. I think it looks great. But anyways, this will probably be the first one on this row, so that will probably be my favorite of the B tier. Moving on to Thor: The Dark World. Okay, now this, I know everybody does not hold this in high regard. I don't hate this movie, but I don't watch it that often. It's probably my least favorite. There is stuff that I like about it, but honestly, I think the best scene out of this movie was probably when Chris Evans made a cameo as Captain America, which was actually Loki impersonating Captain America on Asgard, which that was probably the best scene, which is kind of sad because that was just a cameo. I just find it a very dry plotline, dry villain, bland story, dark colors, and that's why I'm putting it in the D tier right here. Okay, moving on. We have Thor Ragnarok. Now, this is a big step up from Thor The Dark World. I mean, the first two Thor movies were not as highly regarded as as probably some of the worst movies inside the MCU. So this was really a big game changer for Thor, this movie. When I first watched it, I absolutely loved it. It was probably one of my favorite MCU movies. Still is. It's a very watchable MCU movie. It's kind of like a Hulk and Thor buddy cop kind of movie, because that's basically what this is. And the humor is great and it lands, but sometimes the humor can take away from the story quite a bit. From the emotional elements, like with Odin dying and the fall of Asgard, sometimes the funny jokes can take away from that, but not saying this is a bad movie. I absolutely love this movie. Korg is probably one of the funniest characters in this movie. Grandmaster is great. I love Jeff Goldblum as Grandmaster. So I would probably put this in the B tier. So not exactly A tier, not pretty close to being in the S tier. So I would not put it in the A tier. I would actually put this lower than Spider-Man Far From Home after rewatching it. This was probably the spot that Spider-Man Far From Home and then Thor Ragnarok behind it. That's probably where I had it on my list. I would used to have this movie higher on my list, but I've recently lowered it just because the humor can be too much sometimes. And I've actually watched this a lot because it was on Netflix and now it's on Disney Plus, and I've watched it quite a bit. That's probably why I've lowered it on my list, just because I've watched it so much and the humor, it's a little too much sometimes. But it's a hilarious movie, probably one of the funniest movies. One of the funniest movies inside of the MCU. Anyways, moving on, we have the first Thor. Now, I think this is better than Thor: The Dark World, but not by much. I find the fish out of water kind of stuff pretty, the tone is not right. It's just kind of all over the place with the tone. You go from the Asgard to the fish out of water stuff and so on and so forth. So I would put this ahead of Thor: The Dark World, but probably by one spot. So this will probably be the first one on the D tier row. I don't watch this one a lot, but I still enjoy it in some ways. Probably one of my favorite scenes is when Thor is fighting the frost giants on Jotunheim. in one of the opening scenes. But anyways, moving on, we have the Incredible Hulk. So this is a black sheep movie in the MCU, because it's the only Universal made Marvel movie in the MCU, and they had recast Edward Norton's Hulk. They recast Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner instead of Edward Norton because of, I think, creative differences or whatever. Well, not creative differences. I think, I don't know. They had issues with Edward Norton. I think he was causing issues. I don't know. But in some ways, I actually like his Hulk more than I do Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. So I sometimes wish I could have gotten a chance to see what his Hulk would have been like in the MCU, how they let him develop his character more. But not to bash Mark Ruffalo, I think he's done a tremendous job playing Bruce Banner. But I would have really loved to see Edward Norton develop his character inside the MCU. But I thought about putting this in the D tier, but I think I'm going to put this in the C tier. I think they're better. I think it's better than these two right here. By a little bit. Not barely, but not by a lot either. Oh, things around here. That's not what I wanted. Here we go. So that's my first one in the C tier so far. Let's keep going. Ooh. We have next is the first Avengers. Oh man. Back in 2012, this was the movie. I got so excited when this came out. I was pumped. I didn't see it right when it came out. My parents couldn't afford to take me to the theaters all the time, so I had to wait until my parents could just get it for me on DVD for $10 or $12. Well, which my parents actually didn't get this for me on DVD. I had a family member give it to me for Christmas, but when I opened my gift and saw this movie, I screamed like a little girl. I was 11, close to being 12, so I was immature, but I screamed. I was so pumped to see this movie. Part of the reason was I watched the first Captain America movie, and when I saw the trailer for the first Avengers movie, I was like, what? They're going to do that? There's no way. It really got me pumped for this movie, but I would probably put this in the S tier, right there. Yeah. So far, this is the first one in the S tier. I freaking love this movie. I just think the cast is great. The action is fantastic. This movie probably has the best banter among the Avengers. And of course, we get some iconic shots like the Avengers gather around to fight the Chitauri in New York when they're gathering around in a circle. Probably one of the most iconic shots in the MCU. Has some of the most iconic lines in the MCU. Let me think of one. When Cap says Hulk smash, that one sticks in my mind. But then again, a lot of characters in the in Marvel say that. Whoops. Oops, my bad. Moving this one. Moving down the list. Or when Black Widow mentions that Thor, Loki are gods, and Cap was like, there's only one god, man, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that. Probably one of my favorite lines of the movie. It's just so good. And I absolutely love the fight between Iron Man, Thor, and Cap in the forest, which was awesome. Great action, great banter. Which brings me to one of the most iconic lines of that movie. Doth mother know you weareth her drapes? I take that back about One True God doesn't wear anything like that being my favorite line. That right there is probably my favorite line. Does mother know you weareth her drapes? Anyways, moving on. That's my favorite movie so far in this list. So next up, we have Iron Man. Now, for some people, this is probably their favorite MCU movie because it's the first movie in the MCU that impacted them. When this first came out, I was like 6 or 7, something like that. So I wasn't really into movies like this. I mean, I love superheroes. I mean, Spider-Man was my favorite superhero when I was younger. So I like superheroes, but I didn't know who Iron Man was. I wasn't really too fond of Tony Stark's character just because I was just a kid and I thought he was a bit of a I don't know, just a bit of a jerk, a self-righteous, rich philanthropist, billionaire, playboy philanthropist jerk. But I do have to say, after rewatching it a few times recently, I do enjoy this movie quite a bit. Solid action. This is a solid origin story. Some people actually prefer Terrence Howard as War Machine over Don Cheadle, but sometimes I don't know. Whoops, didn't mean to put it there. But I don't really think he would be a better War Machine. I don't know. Who knows? If they had let him be War Machine later on in the MCU, if they had let him stay in the MCU, who knows? He could have turned out to be great. But I don't know. Anyways, this is a good, solid origin story, good action. This is Robert Downey Jr.'s breakout role, which nobody thought that he could pull this off, but man, he did. And this is what kick-started the MCU. And it has some good lines, good iconic lines, like "I am Iron Man," or I'm trying to think of that one. What does he say? Oh, he says, "Yeah, I can fly." That one's a good line too. I would probably put this in the A tier. So this is almost S tier. This movie is definitely low scale compared to later MCU movies, but as far as like a standalone film, it is so close to being S tier. So taking it on its own. So that's what I'm trying to do with these movies, is taking them on their own, and ranking them. But ultimately, this is my whole MCU ranking here. Anyways, hold on. Okay, hold on. Next up, we have Iron Man 3. So, not as strong as the first Iron Man. This is probably my second favorite. This one is... I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the C tier. It's a black sheep movie in the MCU just because it doesn't really add anything to the whole story in the MCU with the Infinity Saga. Nothing about Infinity Stones, nothing to move the plot and story of Tony Stark. No real progression as far as that goes. But it does have some good action. Taken on its own, it scores really high. But as an MCU movie, it doesn't really add anything to it. And some people do not like the Mandarin twist, so that's why I would put him this low on the list. I would probably put it behind the Incredible Hulk. I debated between these two, which one I liked more. But I do like the Incredible Hulk more. I do love the action. I love seeing Hulk fight big, gigantic monster. I do like the action more than in Iron Man. In this movie, more than Iron Man 3. Anyways, moving on. Next we have okay, Iron Man 2. Now I don't didn't mean to do that. I just want to Iron Man 2. So this to me is not. There are some aspects about this movie that I do love more than Iron Man 3. I love the action more in this movie. I love the banter even more. But this is just kind of a mess of a movie. Too many plot lines going on with Ivan Vanko as a Whiplash and Justin Hammer's in this, so there are two villains there right off the bat. Tony having a drinking problem. He's dying, and he finds a message from his father, so then he creates this new element for an arc reactor. So like half the movie he's basically sitting around at home while the villain is plotting to I don't know, I guess just kill Tony, get revenge on him for ruining his family or whatever. Not the worst MCU movie. I do find it, there are things about it that I do find more enjoyable. I would not put it in the D tier because of that reason. I do have fun watching it, but it's a mess of a movie, which this will probably be the last one on the C tier. So right off the bat, I'm going to put it right there. Anyways, moving on. We have one of the latest MCU movies, Avengers Endgame. Oh man, I absolutely love this movie. I saw this one twice in the theaters. Had some great moments like Cap lifting the hammer, which was probably one of the best scenes of the entire movie when he kicked Thanos' butt. Also the portal scene with all the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy coming out, and the Wakandans, the Asgardians, the Ravagers, just everybody coming out of those portals. It was great. And the time travel, I liked going back and kind of like revisiting some of those places in the past MCU movies, kind of a love letter to the MCU. But although the time travel whole thing does, some aspects of it just doesn't make sense. I feel like they handled it kind of poorly, but with that, I still absolutely love this movie. I could watch this over and over again, and I like how this deals with the effects of after Infinity War, how this movie explores how these characters are feeling and how it's impacted them. Some in good ways, some in negative ways. So I love how it deals with that. Not super heavy on action, but it does deal with the emotional aspects of the snap, of the effects of the snap, which I absolutely love that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the S tier. This is one of my favorite movies in the MCU, and I actually like this more than the Avengers, which is sad. It's just so big, so epic. Anyways, so we're gonna keep moving along. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm just gonna put that up there. I'm not gonna put it. That's not my final score for Guardians of the Galaxy. But I had to rewatch this a couple of times before I enjoyed it and absolutely loved it for what it was trying to do. The first time I watched it, it was at a friend's house and it was late, and for some reason they had the volume down so low so I could hardly hear what they were saying in the movie. But this is a pretty funny movie. The humor lands, and there are some emotional moments inside this movie, like Groot sacrificing himself to save his newfound friends and saying, "We are Groot," which really hit home. And I love how they take Drax, a character which I thought was just going to be probably my least favorite. I thought he was going to be probably my least favorite character of the Guardians. But it's really tough to say now because he is absolutely hilarious. He takes things so literally, and he's so awkward sometimes. And he does stupid stuff like the scene when he calls for Ronan to come so that he could kill him, which was absolutely stupid plan. I didn't expect that. It was just man, Drax, what the heck, dude? You're gonna get everybody killed. I didn't expect to love his character so much, but I love Groot, I love Rocket, Star-Lord is great, and even Gamora, she's good too. Another character that I didn't think I was going to like as much as I did, but I do love Drax. I love how they took these comic book characters that were not well known and just made a really good, fun, enjoyable, watchable movie that I absolutely love. Not exactly S tier. Not this movie did not impact me, but I have a blast watching this. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the A tier. Which I think it's better than Iron Man. I find this more enjoyable than Iron Man. So I'm gonna put it ahead of Iron Man there. Alright. Next up we have Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange. I absolutely loved this movie the first time I watched it. I believe it's a pretty underrated movie in the MCU. I think it has some great visuals. Some people would argue, well, it's Inception. Well, Inception inside a comic book superhero movie, which I absolutely love how they handled that. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange. In this movie, he's perfect for the role. And I didn't expect his character to be as funny as he turned out to be. The jokes I found were funny, and I actually didn't mind the villain so much. But anyways, not exactly S tier, but I did find this to be a really enjoyable, watchable movie. This is in my top 10. I would probably put this in front of Iron Man, but behind Guardians of the Galaxy. Probably one of my favorite moments out of this movie was, it was a very subtle moment in the movie. It was when he got back from the hospital and came out of the portal and found the body on the floor and this cape just floating there. And then he just grabs the cape and flips it around. And it looks, the way he flipped it around, it was just so, I don't know what about it was. It was just, I don't know how to describe it. I just love that scene. It was just kind of, I guess, an iconic Doctor Strange type of thing that he would do, is to just flip his cape like that in that scene. Anyways, that's one of my favorite moments in the movie. I don't know why. I guess with the music playing, that kind of added to that scene. Anyways, moving on, we have Captain Marvel. Now, I did have this higher on my list a while back after I watched this the first time. I did find this to be enjoyable. I don't hate it as much as some other people do, but recently this movie has gone down lower on my list. So, where to put this? Jeez. I have recently lowered this on my list. This is probably going to end up in the C tier, not B tier. It's not good enough to be in the B tier movies. It doesn't deserve a D for sure. So it's going to be in the C tier, but the trouble is, I don't know where to put this. I don't know if I like it better. I know I like it better more than Iron Man 2. trouble is, do I like it more than Iron Man 3? I don't know. I love all the 90s references in the movie. Some of those moments are hilarious. I like the de-aging of Nick Fury and how Brie Larson's Captain Marvel has to work with Fury, which he's not director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's just an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. But, and I do kind of like the plot twist that the Skrulls aren't really the bad guys, though. It's the Kree. And, but it was also kind of disappointing at the same time, because I kind of want them to do, like, a Secret Wars, I guess it's called Secret Wars. The storyline in Marvel Comics where the Skrulls, they infiltrate the Earth and take the identities of certain people in key areas of governments and superhero teams and all that, just to take over the world so that they can populate it. I really wish they could have gone that route with the Skrulls, but it looks like they're not. Just with them making the Skrulls good guys. But in a way, I do like it. I may have to put this in between Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. I don't hate it, but I certainly don't love it. But it's a solid movie. I'd watch it again. This is probably the worst of the Phase 3 movies, to be honest. Some of the action was, or there wasn't that much action in the movie, and it was probably there was some cringy acting in the movie as well. And it does take a while for the story to pick up. At the beginning, it's kind of slow, drags a little bit, but it picks up eventually. But anyways, moving on, we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, some people would consider this to be their favorite movie in the MCU. For me, I don't get that. I find this to be a really good movie, a really good MCU movie, but not exactly. Man, this isn't my favorite. This probably has some of the best hand-to-hand combat in any MCU movie. That's probably why I love this. But I find the story there's not an MCU flair in this movie as much as there are in the other movies. Maybe that's why. It's just like, it feels more like a standalone movie, even though it's connected to the bigger MCU. So it's connected to the MCU just like Iron Man is, or the Avengers is, or Captain Marvel. But it also feels like it's a standalone film. It's kind of its own thing. But I don't. That's why it doesn't. I don't hold this as high as other people do. It's just kind of missing that flair like the other MCU movies do. Not as many jokes as other movies in the MCU, but
I do enjoy this movie a lot. So I would put this in the A tier. Probably. So I would put this ahead of Iron Man, and I'll probably put this ahead of Doctor Strange, but behind Guardians of the Galaxy. I love Guardians of the Galaxy more than Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I do have a blast with this movie. I love watching it. Good story, good action. I love how they explore with Hydra taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. Really adds weight to the story. But anyways, moving on. We have Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, I hold this movie in high regard because this was the movie that I really got. This was the first movie that I really got interested in the MCU. Like I was watching the first. When I watched the first Iron Man, I wasn't really into it. Same with the Incredible Hulk, and moving on to Iron Man 2 and 4. Like, those movies, I didn't really get excited for. I enjoyed watching them, but this was the movie that I got pumped. Like, for some reason, I love the character of Captain America. He's just... this got me so excited for the first Avengers movie because of the trailer that's shown at the end of the movie. This is what got me pumped for it. I think this movie has a solid origin story, good action. His suit in this movie is probably my favorite Captain America suit in the MCU, to be honest. Like, I love this suit more than a bunch of the others. I do love Cap's suit in Avengers Endgame. It probably has competition with that suit, but I don't know. I think this is my favorite suit. My favorite Captain America suit in the MCU. But, so anyways, the problem that people have with this movie is that the montage through World War II, that it goes too fast. But we're not really focusing on what Cap did during World War II, basically, so much, and focusing on his origin and what makes Captain America who he is. This is not exactly an S-tier movie, but I do hold this in high regard. This is going to be an A-tier movie for me, for sure. So I would probably put this ahead of Iron Man, but I would keep it behind Doctor Strange. I absolutely love watching this movie. I know some of you are insulted that I'm putting this ahead of Iron Man. Are insulted, but hey, this is my list. This is what I enjoy watching more. But anyways, moving on. We have Captain America Civil War. So, this, when I ranked my movies for the first time, I almost put this in my number 3 spot on my list, and having Avengers in number 4. But, man, I felt like I was betraying the Avengers, honestly. I love Captain America Civil War, but the first Avengers is what really did it for me. I loved that movie so much that I couldn't put this one ahead of the Avengers. But I still hold this movie in high regard. I absolutely love it. I think it's the better, well, not necessarily the better Captain America movie. As far as the Captain America story goes,
this may be the weakest, but not by much. I find this to be a solid story. Some people would argue that this is Avengers 2.5 movie with all the heroes in this, except Thor and Hulk. They're really the only superheroes that are missing. But I really don't think it takes from the story of Cap and Bucky. Cap trying to save his friend, and it brings Tony into this dynamic. Having Bucky killing Tony's parents, such a clever way to handle that as part of the story. And of course, this movie introduces Spider-Man and Black Panther, which I absolutely love. Black Panther's suit is probably the one in this movie is probably my favorite suit. I'd prefer than the new one that he has now. Anyways, moving on. I'm going to put this in my... I'm going to put this in the A tier, and I will probably put this out of Guardians of the Galaxy. I definitely enjoyed it, watched this more. I love the banter in this movie. I think the airport scene is probably one of the best scenes of the movie. It has really good banter, really good action. I just love it. It's just a fan service MCU movie. But not quite S tier. I almost put it in S tier. But anyways, moving on. We have Black Panther. Now, this I think is an overrated MCU movie. Some people consider this to be their favorite movie in the MCU, which I don't get it. It's good, not the worst, but it's not as good as people claim it to be. This I would probably put ahead of The Incredible Hulk, but this is... I don't think it deserves a C. I think it should be in the B tier. Right behind Thor Ragnarok for right now. I do enjoy this movie quite a bit, but I don't like the Black Panther suit as much as I do as much as I love his suit in Captain America Civil War. The villain's good, but I don't get why so many people are giving Killmonger high praise. Is moving on. We're just going to go ahead and go to the next movie in the list. We have Avengers Infinity War. Oh man, this was epic. I absolutely loved watching this in the theaters. Such iconic scenes, iconic lines, such as like, "Why is Gamora?" Such a meme-worthy line. Man, this was probably one of the best times I had at the theater watching this movie. This is definitely in the S tier, ahead of Avengers and behind Avengers Endgame. I'm going to go ahead and put it here. This is a better constructed movie as far as the story goes and the action compared to Avengers Endgame. But what holds it back for me is just how depressing the end is. When Thanos snaps his finger and half of all life in the universe disappears. It's just so depressing and sad to see all our characters leave. Even though now I know what happens to them, how they come back in Avengers Endgame, most of them do. It's just, it's still so depressing, sad when I watch it. It just kind of reminds me of how upset I was or how much of I can't talk. Anyways, it just reminds me of how upset and sad I was when I saw the end. I wasn't upset like I hated this movie, but I was just upset to see my characters go like that. And just so I had to sit on this for a whole year. A whole lot of people, of course, I was not the only one who had to sit on this for a whole year, wondering what's going to happen in the next Avengers movie. But it was worth the wait. That's what holds it back for me. That is really the only thing. If it wasn't, the ending wasn't so depressing or whatever, this would probably be my number one movie in the MCU. But for now, I'm putting this at my number 2. Anyways, moving on. We have Avengers Age of Ultron. Whew. No, this is probably the weakest of the Avengers movies, to be quite honest, so definitely not S tier. It does some things better than some of the things they do in the first Avengers movie, but they jam-pack a whole lot of stuff in this movie, and it's just kind of all over the place, from Tony and Banner creating Ultron, the twins with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and stuff about the Infinity Stones and Vision, and them going all over the place, like going to Hawkeye's safe house or his home, and of course the Avengers Tower, and them going to Africa, and going to Sokovia, and of course they have visions when Scarlet Witch, messes with her mind, showing them visions of different things, like with Black Widow, the Red Room. I think it's called the Red Room. And also visions of Asgard being destroyed with Thor, and with Cap, him with that last dance, with that first dance with Peggy, and it was just kind of all over the place with the different things they were going for in this movie. I imagine this was a really disappointing movie for a lot of MCU fans, like them watching the trailers and being so disappointed with this. I didn't watch the trailers too much, so I didn't watch this movie right when it came out, and it didn't disappoint me as bad, but this is not the greatest movie. It is disappointing, but I'm going to go ahead and... This is not C tier. I do think it's better than these movies. I think it's better than Black Panther, honestly. I find it more watchable. So I'm going to put it right here between Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther. I do have a lot of fun watching this movie, but this is definitely the weakest of the Avengers movies. Anyways, moving on, we have Ant-Man. Okay, so I do love this movie a lot. I love Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. The villain and the plot, it's too similar to the plot and the villain of Iron Man. But I do find this to be a fun, enjoyable, watchable movie. It was really different for what Marvel had done in the MCU prior to this, because they were introducing a superhero that could shrink and doing new sorts of visuals and effects. It was just really cool, something different. This is a funny movie. Not the funniest movie in the MCU, and the reason why I say that is
I probably would remember a bunch of the jokes if this was the funniest movie in the MCU or one of the funniest. I do have to say, Luis is probably one of the best parts of this movie. He's just a funny character. He was made for the movies. He was not a character that was introduced in the comics. He was introduced in this movie, but later I think they added him into the comics. Like they introduced him in that. He was made for the movies, but he's probably one of the best parts of this movie. Like his story with about like with his storytelling, I find it hilarious, and a lot of other people do. Probably the best part of that movie when he's doing the storytelling. But anyways, moving on. Let's put this on the list. Not C tier. I do enjoy watching this movie. Not A tier. This will probably get on the B tier. I don't think it's as good as Spider-Man Far From Home or Thor Ragnarok. I think I do like this more than Avengers Age of Ultron. Oh, crap. I find it to be fun and enjoyable. It is funny. I do love the banter between Scott Lang and Hank Pym. Hank trying to take Scott under his wing, teach him how to be a hero, and it's really cool how they explore that. I do find this to be a more fun and watchable movie, more than Age of Ultron. Anyways, moving on, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I actually like this movie more than the original Ant-Man. I was surprised at how much I loved this movie. When I rewatched all the MCU movies and ranked them, I was so surprised to find this in my top 10. I didn't expect this one to be in my top 10. This movie came out, I think, right after Avengers Infinity War, so it was just kind of nice to have an MCU movie with characters that hadn't been snapped away yet after Avengers Infinity War. Of course, this was kind of a prequel, or this was kind of happening during the events of Avengers Infinity War. But it was just kind of nice tone. It wasn't trying to do anything big. It was just trying to be a fun, watchable film for the family. This is probably one of the funnier to me, I find the humor in this movie to land more than just about any other MCU movie. I think the humor works. From Luis's storytelling, the jokes inside this movie, I find more memorable than the ones in Ant-Man. I think it's more solid. Of course, there's a car chase, and there's a race to save Hope's mom and from the quantum realm. It's basically a race against the clock with this movie. That's, I guess, why I enjoy it so much. It's so low scale compared to the movie that came before it, which was Avengers Infinity War. But it was just a nice breath of fresh air for me. Not B tier. I definitely like it more than these. So I would have to put this in A tier, but I would probably put this after Iron Man. I do enjoy watching this quite a bit. Alright, now moving on, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. When I first watched this, I was, to be honest, kind of disappointed. This was not exactly a Spider-Man that I was familiar with. Like, I watched the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I get that Marvel Studios wanted to make it a different Spider-Man for the MCU than done in the past. Like, in the past, they've tried to do the origin and original Spider-Man characters, but for this movie they didn't really touch up on his origin at all, and they changed some of the characters in the movies. I think Ned was a character created for the movies, if I remember correctly, as a best friend instead of Harry Osborn. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong. He could have been introduced in the comics first, but I was kind of disappointed with this movie. Some people like this more than Spider-Man Far From Home, but I find Spider-Man Far From Home to be more of a Spider-Man movie for some reason than this one. I just felt like this was more of a high school movie for it's hard to describe it. It was just kind of out of character for Spider-Man, for Peter Parker to go to like a school party, or not a school party, party that some friends from school were throwing, and Flash, they totally changed his character. He used to be kind of an intimidating bully. Now he's like a bully that you could probably easily beat up. I mean, if you look at Tom Holland, he looks like he could beat the crap out of Flash Thompson. I forget that name of the actor that plays him in this movie, but he looks like he could beat the crap out of him. And I don't know why they chose an actor like that for that character. It's just totally out of character. And Mary Jane Watson is not in this movie, but they have another version of her, and her name is Michelle, and people call her MJ, which is the MCU's take on Mary Jane Watson. Which I know I hate Zendaya as MJ, but since they changed the character, it just kind of throws me off quite a bit. I found this movie to be disappointing, but I do find Michael Keaton's Vulture to be one of the best villains in the MCU. He's not necessarily trying to do bad for the sake of being bad. He's trying to do things in a bad way to support his family, by stealing alien technology and creating it and like selling it, and, to support his family. I do like the relationship between Tony and Peter that they have. That's I do love that relationship. It works. I think some people would argue that Peter is like Iron Boy. But for the MCU, I think it works in that regard. Tony kind of plays this Uncle Ben figure since they didn't introduce him at all in the MCU. So he plays into that role very well. I guess I don't mind the way they changed Aunt May a little bit. Aunt May used to be the sweet old lady, and now Aunt May in the MCU, she's like this
supposed to be like this sexy kind of Aunt May that men would hit on. I don't know. It's weird how they changed it up. But I do like this movie. I do enjoy watching this movie, but this is not S tier. It's not A tier for me either. I do find this more disappointing than Spider-Man Far From Home. It just doesn't feel as much as Spider-Man, like Spider-Man, as Spider-Man Far From Home does. I do like this less than Thor Ragnarok. I would probably put this between Thor Ragnarok and Ant-Man. It was a disappointing movie, but I do enjoy watching it. Even after rewatching it, I found it to be disappointing. But, anyways, moving on. We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is the last one that we have to put on here. So originally, after we watched this the first time, I think I enjoyed this one more than the first one, because when I watched this one for the first time, I think I'd only seen the first Guardians of the Galaxy one time, and this is just a super funny movie, and I guess that's why I enjoyed this more than the first one. Sorry, I'm tired. But because this is because this is a super funny movie, the humor is just kind of too much. It kind of takes away from the bigger story, the bigger picture, the plot line of Star-Lord's dad being the villain. And some of the things inside of this movie I do find distasteful, like how the Ravagers are torturing Groot and Baby Groot, I should say, and Yondu and Rocket. Just like it's just kind of distasteful stuff that I don't really want to watch or listen to them. Some other thing I find distasteful is like I don't know if I would say distasteful, but like when Drax is talking about how his parents made love, and it was just so awkward. I found it funny, but it was so awkward, and like I don't know, I feel like they didn't need that humor in there, but they put it in there anyways, and I found it to be funny. You know, like some people find it to be absolutely disgusting, and like, why would they put that in this movie? Not real heavy on action, and it does just have the main villain, Ego, just like sleeping most of the time and talking to Star-Lord to what's his name? I'm trying to think. Peter Quill, about how he can be like a god. And then, of course, there's Rocket, Groot, and Yondu just doing their own thing. The funeral they had for Yondu was touching. It's probably the most emotional, one of the most emotional moments in the MCU, maybe. But I felt like the tone of this movie, it was just kind of all over the place with the humor, and maybe not all over the place, it was just the humor just way too much in this movie. Yeah, a lot of times you found the characters just laughing their heads off at jokes that shouldn't be laughed about as much as they should. But anyways, we need to put this on the list somewhere. So I am probably going to put this. I'm gonna have to put it in this B tier, right behind Black Panther. I enjoyed it. I don't think it deserves a C tier, but it's probably the weakest movie in the B tier, to be honest. So this is my final list right here, you guys, from D to S tier, from down to up. So we have Thor: The Dark World at number 23. Number 22, we have Thor. Number 21, we have Iron Man 2. Number 20, we have Captain Marvel. Number 19, we have Iron Man 3. Number 18, we have Hulk. Well, the Incredible Hulk. And then, let's see, number 17, I believe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 16, Black Panther. Number 15, Avengers Age of Ultron. Number 14, Ant-Man. Number 13, Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 12, Thor Ragnarok. Number 11, Spider-Man Far From Home. Number 10, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Number 9, Iron Man. Number 8, Captain America the Winter Soldier. Number 7, Doctor Strange. Number 6, Captain America the Winter Soldier. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 4, Captain America Civil War. Number 3, The Avengers. Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. And number 1, Avengers Endgame.